Do you know what is the grounded theory? Have you ever heard about this? The grounded theory is a systematic methodology that has been largely but not exclusively applied to qualitative research conducted by social scientists. The methodology involves the construction of hypotheses and theories through the collecting and analysis of data. Grounded theory involves the application of inductive reasoning, and this methodology contrasts with the hypothetical deductive model used in traditional scientific research. A study based on grounded theory is likely to begin with a question, or even just with the collection of qualitative data. All researchers interview the data collected. Ideas or concepts become apparent to the researchers. These ideas are said to emerge from the data, and researchers stack those ideas with codes that summarize the ideas. As more data are collected and reviewed, codes can be grouped into higher level concepts and then into categories. These categories might become the basis of hypotheses or new theory. Thus, grounded theory is quite different from traditional scientific model of research, where researchers chooses an existing theoretical framework, develops one or more hypotheses derived from that framework, and only then collects data for the purpose of assessing the validity of the hypothesis. Its methodology possesses four stages. The first stage is the code stage, which consists in identifying anchors that allows the key point to the data to be gathered. The second stage is the concept stage, which consists in collection of codes of similar content that allows the data to be grouped. The third stage is the category stage, which consists in broad groups of similar concepts that are used to generate a theory. Then, the final stage is the theory stage, which consists on a collection of categories that detail the subject of the research. Once data is collected, grounded theory analysis involves the following basic steps. The first is coding text and theorizing. In grounded theory research, this search for theory starts with the very first interview that one codes. Small chunks of the text are coded line by line. Useful concepts are identified where key phrases are marked, then the concepts are named. The processes involve analyzing data such as conceptual components emerge. The next steps involve theorizing, which partly includes pulling concepts together and thinking through how each concept can be related to a larger, more inclusive concept. The constant comparative method plays an important role here. Memoing and theorizing. Memoing is the process by which researchers write running notes bearing on each of the concepts being identified. The running notes constitute an intermediate step between coding and the first draft of completed analysis. Memos are field notes about concepts and insights that emerge from observations. Memoing starts with the first concepts identified and continues right through the processing of all concepts, and contributes to theory building, and then integrating, refining, and writing of theories. Once coding categories emerge, the next step is to link them together in a theoretical model constructed around a central category that holds the concepts together. These constant comparative methods come into play along with negative case analysis. Negative case analysis refers to a researcher looking for cases that are inconsistent with the theoretical model. Theorizing is involved in all steps. All the data is fundamental property for grounded theory. It means that everything that the researcher encounters when studying a certain area is data. including not only interviews or observation, but anything that helps the researcher to generate a concept for the emergent theory. So, this method for researching denotes dual reference. This means that it's a method which consists of flexible methodological strategies and products that this type of methodological inquiry. Thus, the products are essential on this type of research as it will guide the work forward. This method was initially developed by Barney Glasser and Anselm Stroh in the year of 1967, and the original idea implied to merge the quantitative and qualitative research approaches with the social research. The inductive theoretical thrust of these methods is central to their logic. On the other hand, the resulting analysis builds their power on strong empirical foundations. It is typically used when a theory is not available to understand or explain a process that occurs over time of the process, as well as when it's necessary to aid in operationalizing abstract social processes within a specific context. Increasingly, researchers use the term to mean the methods of inquiry for collecting and, in particular, analyzing data. However, these methodological strategies are aimed to construct middle-level theories directly from data analysis, thus to provide focused, abstract, conceptual theories that explain the study's empirical phenomena.
Now I'm going to mention some characteristics of this method. The first one is a process approach. What is a process approach? It's a sequence of action and interaction among people and events pertaining to a topic. The next is theoretical sampling. The researcher chooses forms of data collection that will yield text and image useful in generating a theory. The next is constant comparative data analysis. In an inductive data analysis procedure in grounded theory research of generating and connecting categories by comparing incidents in the data to other categories by comparing incidents in the data to other incidents to categories and categories to other categories. A core category. A core category that can become the theme that describes or becomes the main theme of the process. Theory generation is an abstract explanation or understanding of a process about a substantive topic grounded in the data. And the last one is memos. Notes the researcher writes through the research process to elaborate on ideas about data and the code categories. Grounded theory does not seek to control variables but to understand why they happen from the perspective of people involved. It is essential to know how to listen to others beyond our own prejudices. Our experience is the basis for the performs the analysis, but not for condition the analysis. The processing is based on the construction of the data, the constant comparison, and the data reconstruction. The consultation of other theories allows to contrast and broaden the view of our theory, but it's not the beginning of the investigation. To conclude, the resulting theory should serve not only academic communities, but also actors involved. Data collection, coding, and analysis. The grounded theory methodological process begins with the choice of the technique and the instruments that the researchers consider appropriate. The field is entered and the data are collected. The collection is carried out through two procedures: adjustment and operation. Fitting is the generation of conceptual categories from the data, and functioning is the ability of the conceptual categories to explain what was investigated. Data attributes are identified in the data. This means the qualities or characteristics of the data, which are compared with each other in order to find commonalities and distinguish differences. Data that share the same characteristics are grouped together. They are assigned a particular label or name that indicates the concept to which they belong. For example, they are grouped into the same code or subcategory. The process of assigning codes is called coding. There are three distinct yet overlapping processes of analysis involved in grounded theory. These are open coding, axial coding, and selective coding. Open coding, axial coding, and selective coding are all steps in the grounded theory method of analyzing qualitative data. With grounded theory, you derive new theories and concepts based on data, in contrast to other methods where you start with an existing theory and see whether or not your data applies to the theory. What is open coding? Open coding is a common first step in the analysis of your qualitative research, and it is often used as the initial coding pass in grounded theory. At this point, you will have started collecting qualitative data, such as transcription from interviews. With open coding, you break your data into discrete parts and create codes to label them. As its name would imply, open coding is meant to open you up to new theoretical possibilities as you first engage with your qualitative data. The purpose of breaking up your data and labeling them with codes is to enable you as the researcher to continuously compare and contrast similar events in your data. You do this by collating all pieces of data, such as quotes, that were labeled with a particular code. This process forces you out of preconceived notions and biases about your own research. Open coding in qualitative research is rarely the only path of coding and is followed by one or more coding methods, such as axial coding. Now, what is axial coding? Axial coding in ground theory is the second step of coding that follows open coding. In contrast to open coding, where you break the data into discrete parts, with axial coding you begin to draw connection between codes. With axial coding, you organize the codes you develop in open coding. With axial coding in qualitative research, you read over your code and underlying data to find how your codes can be grouped into categories. A category could be created based on an existing code, or a new, more abstract category can be developed that encompasses a number of different codes. After conducting axial coding, you will have a number of categories that are supported by a clean-up set of supporting codes. These categories are the axes around which it is supporting code resolves. These categories are the axes around which it is supporting code revolve. And the last one, what is selective coding? Selective coding is the last step in ground theory where you connect all your categories together around one core category. In doing so, you define one unified theory around your research. Selective coding occurs later on in your research and connects categories you have developed from your qualitative data in previous coding cycles, such as axial coding, for example. The core category you develop in selective coding may come from elevating one of the categories from the axial coding stage, or maybe a new category that you derive based on your other categories. The core category ultimately represents the central thesis of your research. Selective coding is the culmination of the grounded theory process, and its purpose is to either define a new theory or modify an existing theory based on your research. Ideally, you will be able to state your theory simply in just a couple of words or sentences and should be stated clearly in your research report.